Eric. Thanks, Cassie, for having me. Thanks for PDPW. Is I think a good discussion here on input costs. Probably one of the biggest things that's going to relate to is corn silage. So that's my focus here. I will, alfalfa haylage or haylage mixes will also be very critical as well, but we can focus on corn silage. And if anybody has questions relating how it will all tie together, please feel free to ask. Next slide. So you can see what I've got here tracked is the last couple of years of corn prices, and I know fertilizer, everything else is going up, but I have some slides here that will just really get you to focus on why this corn silage crop is going to be really valuable to you and really valuable to your diets. With corn prices being this expensive, we need to maximize the quality and tonnage on our corn silage. Next. Here's some different feed commodities. We've got corn gluten feed, soy hulls, canola, soybean meal, soy plus. Same trend here. Everything's moving up. It's really going to put maximum importance on getting high quality feed, high quality corn silage, high quality alfalfa, help keep these ration costs in line and help limit how much of these things we're going to need to feed. Next. Here's just a look at some other commodities. We've got cottonseed and distillers. Similar trends. Everything just keeps going up. Again, these are high energy, high fat, and some protein. So it's just a similar trend here. Next. And here's some of the fats that we will use in dairy diets for high production herds. And how much of these we'll use will really be greatly dependent on the digestibility and quality of your forages. As you can see, we have similar trends. Everything is just going up and up. It really comes back to making sure we get a high quality corn silage crop in, high quality haylage, minimize how many of these things we have to use to keep our ration costs in line. Next. What I've got here is a slide that will just show you some examples of what starch is worth in corn silage. And if you look here, we've got a low quality corn silage at probably 28-29% starch. We've got an average corn silage, I'm going to say, at 35% starch, and then a high quality at 40% starch. When then if you look to the right side of the slide, it'll show you the savings on 1,000 cows, how much difference, going from a low quality to an average quality corn silage, 6.8% starch. On 1,000 cows can be $187,000 a year on the feed budget with current corn prices we have. Going from average quality to a high quality, so another 4.8 starch would be another $131,000. So you're looking in the neighborhood of $310,000, $320,000 a year if you can get yourself from a low end starch corn silage to a high end starch. So I think that really comes back to a lot of things Eric was talking about, making sure you have enough nitrogen there, making sure you maximize that tonnage and yield, and probably also some variety selection. But it's just very large numbers. For every 1% of starch that you get in your corn silage, you can feed about 0.6 of a pound less corn per cow per day. It just really adds up. Next slide, please. So on a 60 pound dry matter intake diet and corn at 250 a ton, and obviously it's even higher than that right now. Here's just what a high starch versus a low starch corn silage diet would run, and how it would look. And there's that $358,000 a year. These were balanced to similar fermentable starch levels. You can see we got similar energy, similar MP, but if we can get more of that starch out of corn silage and less that we have to buy, or less grain corn that we could potentially sell versus having to feed to the cows, because we got more out of our corn silage, it just gives you a lot of options. So I've got it all broken down on a per cow per day, total herd per day, and then per year. So next slide. Another thing to look at is, with this high quality forage, we also want to make sure we have enough of it around. We don't want to get into a situation where we maybe skimped on our fertilizer, we got a lower yield, and maybe we got a good crop, but we don't have enough of it. This is just an example of two diets that are formulated to similar production levels, but one diet we had to use some more commodities to help stretch our forage. And so one diet is figured at 46% forage, and diet one is figured at 54% forage. So about an 8-point spread in forage percent. And if you look at the cost per day savings down there, that could be another $250,000 a year per 1,000 cows, just by having enough quantity of forage around, so you don't have to buy them extra commodities. So in a year like this, with all these input costs going up, I understand fertilizer is more expensive, but your feed costs are up that high that I think it still pays to really push and get maximum tonnage that you can off these acres. Because if you don't, you have potential to just spend it on your feed costs anyhow.
So James, can we go back to that slide for a moment? Because we do
Sure.
have folks that aren't, I don't know what the right way to say, but they don't have the ability to grow all or even any of their feed, and they have to take this in. So there are some regions, some of our neighbors to the west, where getting any corn silage at all is like a gift. And that's not even looking at the quality of that silage. So when you have to look at some of these other commodities to make up for that nutrient balance, if you will, can you kind of talk through what things they should be looking for, or what we should be considering if high quality corn silage isn't even an option?
So you're talking a diet that would be, all haylage and ground corn, or in no corn silage whatsoever, or what are you asking there, Cassie?
Let's break that into two. Let's say you're able to get some corn silage, but it's on the lower quality, so you have to substitute. You have to kind of build into that diet. And then on the flip side, let's say you have very little to no access to corn silage. How do you substitute or build in, or even you ran out, so you have to kind of do that worst case scenario?
Well, I would say probably the first route I would go, let's answer the one where maybe you're not going to have any corn silage, or you just don't have the acres to do it. The first thing that I would try to do is try to buy some standing corn silage out of the field. And if you have a neighbor that is growing some grain corn or something and doesn't have it contracted, I would look at some of the ways of pricing that out. UW Dairy Forage team Dairy Extension team has some good formulas on there for pricing corn silage. And I would say figure out see if there's any chance at all you can buy some standing corn out of the field. Even with the high market prices of grain, I think there's more value in that corn silage, being able to buy it out of the field and store it. I think the grower could make out potentially, and you could make out by having that corn silage. If that is not an option, you're going to need some roughage in the diet. So then you're pretty much just stuck with probably buying a higher amount of grain corn or some of the byproducts. Corn gluten feed will help some, but there's not enough starch there. You could buy some hominy feeds, things like that are going to be higher starch. If that's the case, you're going to have to become a good buyer of some different byproducts and commodities to help stretch and keep costs in line.
Yeah, see, I would add to that as well, that I think it's really important that producers, if they are purchasing standing crop, as James said, really, coming up with that formula that allows them to maximize the value of what they're purchasing. Because far too often, I think we look at, some folks will buy corn silage bait on the per acre basis or on a per ton basis. All that's fine. You're purchasing that forage as far as the quantity goes, but if it has a low starch value in it, I think based on what James is just shown in his part of the presentation, combined with where corn prices are at, you'll actually be paying more for corn silage if you don't factor in the starch content. So some producers, I've run some different formulas where we have a factor in there that calculates for starch content because really that's part of the value of the corn silage. It doesn't make sense to buy just based on a per ton basis if then a nutritionist like James is saying, well, if this doesn't have enough starch, we have to go out and we have to get more dry corn. Well, you're paying that much more now to have that supplemented feed in there. So I think it's really important for producers to really hone in on that formula.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
I appreciate that point on there, Matt. And I think anything you can do to look at and then try to project out what your forage needs are going to be, and do something proactively versus waiting till the last minute. Whether it's trying to contract with a neighbor to buy extra, or you're finding some more land or something like that, and work with your nutritionist and try to find out what, if you don't have access to any, what are some of your lowest cost ingredients that'll fit into what forage you do have. It's all about making it work with the forage that you do have.